Hello, I'm Siska Becker, and welcome to TVRI World's World Highlight. In the next 30 minutes, we'll be presented with our compilation of top stories that have made the headlines this week. This is World Highlight. For our first segment for this edition of World Highlights, we'll start with a recap from Israeli attack in Gaza. The Israeli army conducted another wave of intense airstrikes on early Wednesday morning across multiple locations in the northern, eastern, and southern parts of the Gaza Strip, including Gaza City and Khan Yunis. Meanwhile, United Nations officials urged Israel to cease military operations in the Gaza Strip and called for the restoration of full humanitarian access after Israel resumed large-scale attacks in the war-torn region.
The Wednesday airstrikes came after Israel's attacks on the region one day before. A day earlier, Gaza-based health authorities said the airstrikes on Tuesday killed at least 413. The airstrikes occurred early Tuesday amid indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas regarding the next steps of the truce, which could include ending the war and releasing the remaining Israeli hostages. The strikes broke nearly 2 months of ceasefire and raised fears of fully reigniting the 17-month war. At the UN Security Council's open briefing on the situations in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question in the UN headquarters on Tuesday, Tom Fletcher, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, said the renewed Israeli attacks have once again sparked horror in Gaza. Speaking via video link at a UN briefing in Geneva on Tuesday, Tommaso Della Longa, spokesman of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, said that the Israeli military attacks have resulted in a surge in casualties, putting a strain on medical facilities in Gaza. Also during the briefing in Geneva, Tamim Al-Katan, spokesman for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, urged Israel to immediately cease attacks on Gaza so as to protect civilians. His call was echoed by Fletcher, who also stressed that humanitarian aid transport must be restored. The Israeli army issued evacuation and order on Tuesday amid the ongoing heavy airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, forcing numerous local residents back on roads in displacement, just weeks after a brief ceasefire allowed some to return to their homes. This order told the local residents to leave what the Israeli army calls the combat areas, including Beit Hanun, Khirbet Uza, Abbasan al-Kabira and al-Jadida, and to seek refuge in the western Gaza Strip or Khan Yunis in the south, according to Israeli military's Arabic language spokesperson Avichai Adrae on social media platform X. On the roads leading to Khan Yunis, groups of people were seen carrying the simplest of luggage. Many, including children, the elderly, and the sick, were struggling walking on foot. The order has shattered the hope of a return to normalcy, leaving residents fearful about their future. A Palestinian man in Gaza's Khan Yunis said on Wednesday the resumption of Israel's major bombing campaign in Gaza threw people back into fear and panic. Ibrahim Abu Shattat added planes suddenly violated the truce, sending a barrage of fire and explosive bombs on people. He said this act is totally against human rights. From U.S., a few hundred protesters gathered in New York's Times Square after Israeli airstrikes pounded Gaza and killed more than 400 people. The newest attack shattered nearly 2 months of relative calm since a ceasefire began, as Israel warned the onslaught was just beginning. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators vastly outnumbered Israeli sympathizers during the rally, which began after normal working hours. Drone footage showed hundreds of Israelis marching on a main highway towards Jerusalem in protest against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. Protesters joined the main motorway connecting central Israel and Jerusalem that was blocked for traffic by police. The protest comes a day after Netanyahu ordered to renew attacks on the Gaza Strip, which protesters say risk the lives of hostages held there since October 7, 2023. Internally, Netanyahu is criticized by some hostages' families and their supporters for not doing enough to return the hostages for political reasons. The leader of Yemen's Houthi movement, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, said in a video released on Tuesday that his group would escalate actions against Israel in response to its continued assault on the Gaza Strip. Al-Houthi vowed to take all possible measures against the Israeli enemy and pledged unwavering support for the Palestinian cause.
That's our weekly worth of updates from the Gaza Strip. After this, we'll go to another war-torn region in the world, Ukraine. But first, a short break. World Highlights will be right back. Welcome back to World Highlights on TVRI World with me, Siska Becker. We're now going to give you the updates for the war in Ukraine, which are seeing some glimmer of hope based on a phone conversation between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, who held a telephone conversation that focused on ending the war in Ukraine. In the call that lasts about 90 minutes, Putin agreed to stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities temporarily, but declined to endorse a full 30-day ceasefire that Trump had hoped would be the first step toward a permanent peace deal. Here's the details.
Well, you have a situation where you have a lot of guns pointing at each other.
U.S. President Donald Trump said aid to Ukraine was not discussed in his call on Tuesday with Russian President Vladimir Putin, although the Kremlin said the Russian leader had called for an end to military assistance for Kyiv. Trump made the comments in an interview on Fox News' The Ian Graham Angle Show. Putin agreed on Tuesday to temporarily stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities, but declined to endorse a full 30-day ceasefire that Trump hoped would be the first step towards a permanent peace deal. Ukraine said it would support the scaled-back agreement. The Kremlin said after the Trump-Putin call that Putin also emphasized that any resolution of the conflict would require an end to all military and intelligence assistance to Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump have a good rapport and are determined to restore badly damaged U.S.-Russia ties step by step. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was speaking after Putin and Trump spoke by phone on Tuesday, and the Russian leader agreed to stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities temporarily, but declined to endorse a full 30-day ceasefire that Trump had hoped would be the first step towards a permanent peace deal. He said there had long been a direct phone line between the presidents of the two countries and a video link when necessary, but that it had hardly been used during Joe Biden's administration. He said Putin hoped it could now be used more often. Peskov said that the exact dates and format for the next round of US-Russia contacts would be agreed today and tomorrow. Still from Moscow, President Vladimir Putin said Russian troops were completing the defeat of Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk region after a 7-month incursion by Kyiv's forces. The incursion, which began in August, was aimed at diverting Moscow's forces from eastern Ukraine, gaining a bargaining chip in any future talks, and at riling Putin. Meanwhile, residents of Donetsk, a Russian-controlled city in the eastern Ukraine, said they hoped for peace following phone conversation between the Russian and the US presidents. Some, however, were skeptical, saying that only a signed agreement, not phone calls, could lead to peace, while others doubted if Ukraine would comply with a peace agreement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he would speak to President Donald Trump later, and that the United States should monitor any potential ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, focusing on energy facilities. Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed on Tuesday to stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities temporarily, but declined to endorse a full 30-day ceasefire that President Donald Trump hoped would be the first step towards a permanent peace deal. Moscow and Kyiv accused each other on Wednesday of launching air attacks that damaged infrastructure just hours after their leaders agreed to a limited ceasefire to halt attacks on energy infrastructure. From Berlin, Germany's defense minister said an agreement by Russia's president to temporarily stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities counts for nothing, and that US President Donald Trump would have to win greater concessions from Vladimir Putin. Boris Pistorius said attacks on civilian infrastructure in the first night after the supposedly pivotal and great phone call have not abated. In Beijing, China is pleased to see all efforts leading to a ceasefire in Ukraine, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said on Wednesday when commenting on the phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his US counterpart Donald Trump on Tuesday. At a regular press briefing in Beijing, Mao described the efforts as a necessary step towards achieving peace. And Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said a proposed ceasefire involving energy infrastructures in the Ukraine-Russia war was a very first glimmer of hope to end the conflict. She thought that would be a very first glimmer of hope, aligned with what was previously agreed upon.
To know more about other U.S. policies, both domestic and international, stay tuned to World Highlights right after this short break. We'll be right back. You're still watching World Highlights on TVRI World. And for this week's of international news, news from United States are making the headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump released material related to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy on Tuesday, seeking to honor his campaign promise to provide more transparency about the shock event in Texas. And the Trump administration also on Tuesday defended the deportation of Venezuelans after a judge temporarily banned removing people from the United States under an 18th century law.
Prime Minister Mark Carney on Tuesday said Canada would boost its military and security presence in the Arctic, a frozen and mineral-rich expanse that is of increasing interest to U.S. President Donald Trump. Carney, who was appointed last week and is expected to call an election within days, said Canada would work with Australia to build an early warning radar system that Ottawa first announced in 2022. Canada will also spend $420 million to allow the military to have a greater sustained and year-round presence in the Arctic, and will expand its training and deployment. The Bank of Japan kept interest rates steady on Wednesday in a widely expected move as policymakers chose to spend more time gauging how prospects of higher U.S. tariffs would affect the export-focused economy. The decision came as fears as global slowdown caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy overshadow wage and price data showing Japan is making progress in durably achieving the central bank's 2% inflation target. The BOJ ended a massive stimulus program last year on the view that Japan was on the cusp of meeting its long-term inflation objectives. Meanwhile, data and screen recordings taken from the plane tracking website Flightradar24 from Saturday and Sunday show how the deportation operation to El Salvador via Honduras proceeded on Saturday as the judge ordered it to come to a halt. The judge on Monday asked Justice Department lawyers to answer questions on when exactly Trump's proclamation took effect and when the deportation flights to El Salvador took off, amid concerns that the Republican president is further pushing the boundaries of executive power and setting a potential constitutional clash with the judiciary. Meanwhile, a federal judge blocked billionaire Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency from taking any more steps to shut down the U.S. Agency for International Development, saying their efforts to close the agency likely violated the U.S. Constitution. In a preliminary ruling, U.S. District Judge Theodore Chuang in Maryland ordered President Donald Trump's advisor Musk and Doge to restore access to USAID's computer systems for the agency's direct and contract employees, including thousands who have been placed on leave. The ruling came in response to a lawsuit by current and former employees, one of several currently pending over the rapid dismantling of the foreign aid agency. From Germany, the European Union will tighten steel import quotas to reduce inflows by a further 15% from April, a senior EU official said on Wednesday, in a bid to prevent cheap steel flooding the European market after the Trump administration imposed new tariffs. European steel producers already battling high energy prices and competition from Asia and elsewhere warn that the EU risks becoming a dumping ground for cheap steel, which could kill off Europe's plans as Washington's tariffs red raw the trade flows. The Commission will on Wednesday propose a raft of trade-related measures to boost its ailing metals industry, part of a new European Steel and Metals Action Plan. A draft of the plan seen by Reuters earlier this week showed the EU is studying curbs on metal imports. And Trump signed an order shortly after taking office in January related to the release, prompting the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation to find thousands of new documents related to the Kennedy assassination in Dallas. In a scramble to comply with Trump's order, The U.S. Justice Department ordered some of its lawyers who handle sensitive national security matters to urgently review records from the assassination, according to a Monday evening email seen by Reuters. A White House official said the documents would be released on Tuesday in the afternoon through the National Archives opens new tab. Kennedy's murder has been attributed to a sole gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. The Justice Department and other federal government bodies reaffirmed that conclusion in the intervening decades, but polls show many Americans believe his death was a result of a conspiracy.
After that tour of U.S. policies, next World Highlights will travel to different parts of the world to observe the festivities for Ramadan month. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching World Highlights on TVRI World. The end of Ramadan is near, but the festivities are just getting merrier, and we have the reports. During this Ramadan month, Muslims around the world are observing fasting. The festive atmosphere of this month is celebrated in various ways by Muslims in different countries. Here we present a collection of stories about Ramadan celebrations across the world.
As the call for evening prayer rang through Karachi on Tuesday, March the 18th, hundreds of Pakistanis shared their iftar with a free meal provided by a local charity. Street iftar meals have long been a Ramadan tradition in the city, with temporary roadside tables and mats set up by charity workers. Donors usually offers money and food products to volunteers who later set up the food stalls 1 hour before Maghrib evening prayers to prepare the meals. The free meals are not just for those struggling to afford food, though they are also for those who are out working and can make it back home in time to eat with their families. Many lower-income families use the free meals at the roadside due to the rising cost of food during Ramadan. Meanwhile, Algiers municipality organized on Friday, March the 14th, a communal iftar along the city's main downtown avenue, bringing together people to share a meal and break their fast during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Head of Algiers municipality Mahda Bengalia said the event aimed to bring together all segments of society around traditional dishes. The mega iftar relied on volunteers, including chefs, who said they served 2,000 meals to attendees. In Cairo, Egyptians flock to herb shops for specialty drinks and spices that add a flavor touch to iftar and suhoor meals during the holy month of Ramadan. In the heart of Cairo, Harras Spice Shop stands as a testament to Egypt's deep-rooted spice trade. Established in 1939, the shop, which began as a humble spice store, has earned a reputation as the go-to destination for herbs, oils, and natural remedies. It has since grown into a full-fledged company with several branches and factories selling and exporting spices, herbs, oils, and cosmetic products. Throughout the years, Harras has integrated spices from different cultures, said Youssef Taisir, the director of Harras Company and grandson of its founder, Abdel Rahman Harras. This included, for example, sumac and thyme, which flourished when Egypt began receiving Syrians in 2011. The company is now known for its herbs used for medical purposes, as well as its natural and aromatic oils. From Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared iftar, a Ramadan fast-breaking meal, with Ukrainian Muslim soldiers. During Islam's holy month of Ramadan, believers abstaining from food and drink during daylight hours break their fast with the iftar evening meal. Speaking to service members of Ukraine's security forces, Zelensky said that important diplomatic efforts took place during Ramadan. Meanwhile, people in Gaza and in Amman gathered for iftar meals organized by Tikiyet Ali, a food relief Jordanian non-governmental organization. Tikiyet Ali, which was founded in 2003, has assisted Palestinians in Gaza since the beginning of the war between Israel and Hamas, delivering around 70,000 food parcels and 40,000 jackets, according to the organization's Director General, Samer Balkar. Footage provided by the organization showed volunteers distributing meals to families in an area surrounded by tents in Jabalia, while traditional songs were performed. From Libya, children as young as 7 showcased their skills and talent in reciting the Quran, preaching and delivering the Islamic call to prayer in a competition held in the Libyan city of Misrata. The Young Preacher and Muezzin competition, which was judged by a panel of religious scholars, featured 3 main categories: Quranic memorization and recitation, Best Young Preacher and Best Young Muezzin, who calls Muslims to prayer. A total of 22 children took part in the competition for the Best Preacher and Best Muezzin. The competition was organized by the Libyan Youth Hostels Association, a non-governmental institution dedicated to supporting youth. Similar competitions were held in different cities across Libya. At the end of Ramadan, 3 winners will be selected, who will receive a cash prize.
And that report on the festivities of Ramadan month wraps up today's edition of World Highlights. I'm Siska Becker. Thank you all for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.